Good afternoon, Evil, and I will tell you one story of a good viewing. The mirror arrived on an overcast afternoon, propped against the curb by a pair of grimy movers who refused to meet my eyes. Its frame was wrought iron, blackened by time, baroque spirals, and clawed feet bathed in rust. I first noticed it in the listing antique from Eastern Europe, excellent condition, and I'd laughed at my own gullibility. Yet now it towered in my attic, a silent sentinel that radiated something cold and malignant. I climbed the narrow stairs to inspect it, each step groaning under my weight. The attic air was thick with dust motes that danced in the light of my flashlight. I ran a fingertip along the glass. It was unnaturally smooth, almost liquid. My reflection stared back, pale and drawn. Then the surface rippled like a disturbed pond. I blinked, but the motion continued as though a breeze skimmed the smooth face of water. The image distorted, bleeding into a scene I'd never witnessed, a dim alley drenched in yellow streetlight, slick with rain. A man knelt over a body, blood pooling beneath the victim's head, steam rising like a ghost. The kneeling man's face was hidden by a hood, but his gloved hand held a knife, blade curved and wicked. Then the hood shifted. For a heartbeat, I saw my own face staring back at me, eyes wide with cold intent. A scream lodged in my throat. I staggered backward, knocking into a stack of crates that tumbled with splintering. My flashlight clattered to the floor, rolling to a stop and casting half the attic into pitch darkness. The beam faltered, then caught the mirror again. The alley vanished. In its place, a long marble corridor lined with candles, their flames guttering as though in a storm. At the corridor's end, a woman trembled, hands bound behind her back, mouth gagged. My reflection stood beside her, hand pressed against her cheek, fingers splayed in fresh blood. I scrambled for my phone, thumb fumbling for the camera app. When I raised it, the screen showed only my terrified face. The mirror's visions refused to register. I dropped the phone, backpedaled, heart pounding, ears ringing with a distant child's laughter that echoed like shards of glass. Later, much later, I dared to sit before the mirror again. I forced my legs not to tremble, gripped the edge of an old trunk for steadiness. The glass remained unbroken, its surface calm. I swallowed, voice dry, and whispered, "What do you want from me?" Nothing happened. Just my own reflection, gaunt and haunted. The attic door creaked. I spun. The hallway was empty, but the temperature dropped so sharply I could see my breath form clouds. Then the mirror trembled. Slowly, the reflection dissolved into static as though a television tuned to a dead channel. Scenes flickered, a family dinner, father, mother, 2 children, frozen mid-laugh. Then the knife plunged into the father's back. The mother's scream echoed in the glass. The children ran, faces smeared with terror. The killer stood over the fallen, impossibly calm, his mask a pale porcelain visage, and beneath it, me. Images cascaded faster, a woman in a sunlit kitchen, the blade entering her abdomen, a cyclist on a quiet road, blood spraying like red fireworks, a homeless man beneath an underpass, throat slit amid scrawled graffiti. In every frame, there I stood silent, anonymous, unstoppable. I pounded my fists against my temples, desperate to stop the images, but they multiplied, shards cascading in kaleidoscopic horror. When the visions ceased, the attic was silent once more. I collapsed onto the trunk, trembling. My mind reeled. Was this destiny or torture? Could I change what the mirror revealed? Or was I already trapped, watching my own descent into madness? I left the attic and barricaded the door with a wooden chair. Sleep eluded me. In my bedroom mirror, I searched for cracks in the glass, signs of a trick, but found none. I avoided reflective surfaces all night, stumbling through the house blind. At dawn, I crafted a makeshift blindfold from an old shirt, better to stumble in darkness than risk another vision. By mid-morning, hunger drove me outside. The city was unaware of the blood destined to stain its streets. I wandered through cafes, past bookshops, listening to laughter that sounded alien. I caught my reflection in shop windows and turned away, but the flash of cold recognition was inescapable. The face in the window was mine. A man in a charcoal suit caught my eye. He paused at a crosswalk, gaze fixed on his phone, oblivious to the world. The mirror had shown me something, his tie, patterned with tiny silver anchors, a detail I wouldn't have noticed otherwise. My stomach churned. If the visions were accurate, his life was in my hands. I felt the knife's weight in my pocket, except I had no knife. I only had the memory of the blade's cold steel. An irrational urge seized me to save him, to warn him. I followed at a distance, heart hammering. At the edge of the sidewalk, I considered grabbing his shoulder, shouting a warning, but terror clamped around my throat. What if I failed and provoked violence? What if the mirror was inevitable? He stepped into the street. A truck barreled around the corner. He didn't look. I lunged, grabbing his arm, pulling him back onto the pavement. Horns blared. Tires screeched. The world tilted. He stumbled, eyes wide. I opened my mouth to speak, but words stuck. He broke free, stumbling down the block, glancing back in confusion. I watched him go, chest heaving, fingers aching from the grasp. I stood alone as the truck's shadow receded. I had delayed one vision, perhaps saved a life, yet dread coiled in my gut. The mirror offered no absolution, only further horrors. That evening, I sat before it again, blindfold discarded. I needed answers. I whispered, "Show me the beginning." The glass stayed dark. Minutes stretched. Then, as candlelight flickered across the attic floor, the mirror awakened. It showed a cottage in a misty forest, roofs sagging, windows broken. Inside, a woman sat before it, her pale hand brushing the frame. She stared into the glass and screamed. A hand closed on my shoulder so gently I barely felt it. I spun. The attic was empty. My pulse thundered. The mirror's reflection shimmered, then stilled. In its depths, I saw my own trembling hand, reaching toward the glass. A single word formed on the surface, traced in fire-red lines. "Run." I recoiled. The attic door creaked. Footsteps echoed on the stairs below. I pressed my back to the mirror, breath rasping. A shadow passed across the door's frosted glass. Then silence, thick and absolute. My reflection returned, eyes wide, lips parted. But the face staring back was not entirely mine. Behind me, in the glass, someone stood. A silhouette, tall and thin, its head cocked to one side as though curious. I dared not turn around. The mirror's handpoint elongated, index finger raised. A word appeared beneath it, mine. I ripped myself away, stumbling backward into darkness, and fled down the stairs. Behind me, I heard the shatter of glass. Not the mirror, but something inside me breaking. The world blurred into motion as I burst from the house, the mirror's command echoing in my mind. Mine. The night air was cool and damp, laden with the scent of rain on pavement. My footsteps pounded against the stones as I fled, lungs burning, heart thrumming like a war drum. Behind me, I could almost hear the soft scrape of iron claws across wood. The mirror's feet, advancing. I reached the end of the block and skidded to a halt beneath a flickering street lamp. Rain began to patter, drumming a frantic rhythm on my coat. I pressed my back to the lamppost, panting, eyes darting through the darkness. The mirror, an object of impossible gravity, had followed me into every reflection, every glass surface, but here there was only darkness and rain. Trembling, I forced my hand into my pocket and felt cold metal. A small key I'd found beneath the mirror's frame the night I brought it home. I didn't know what it opened, but something told me it was important. I clutched it as though it were a talisman, willing it to hold power. A distant siren wailed. I stumbled down an alley, sweeping my hood over my head. Trash cans overturned, slick with water, and graffiti-etched walls closed in. At the far end, a chain-link gate glinted in the lamplight. I darted toward it, yanked it open, and froze. There, propped against the wall, was another mirror. Smaller, ornate, its glass black as oil. Its frame was carved with shapes I didn't recognize. A coiling serpent, a bleeding rose, a raven perched on a skull. My breath caught. The key in my hand vibrated with warmth. I stepped closer, heart hammering. The surface rippled as though alive. My reflection appeared. Eyes hollow, mouth set in a grim line. Then the glass cleared, revealing the attic scene I'd fled. The black iron mirror standing behind me, claws digging into the wood floor, and at its center, the pale silhouette from the reflection. Tall, thin, its head tilted as though curious. I stared at the silhouette's blank face. It lifted a hand and traced a swirl in the air. On the mirror's black surface, words bled into view. Open. Beneath them, a keyhole glimmered. My fingers trembled around the key. Slowly, I fit it into the mirror's frame. A high-pitched whine sliced through the silence. The key turned in my hand, clicking into place. The mirror shuddered, as though inhaling. The glass pulsed, veins of silver crawling across its inky face. I yanked the key free, heart pounding. Then everything went white. I woke on my back in the center of a vast chamber. Torches burned along walls of rough-hewn stone. The air smelled of mildew and rot. I scrambled to my feet, turning in a slow circle. There were no doors, only countless mirrors, each reflecting others in an endless maze of glass. In every reflection, I saw myself, older, gaunt, eye-sunken, as though I'd spent years wandering here. At the far end of the chamber, the black mirror from the alley waited, its glass now silvered and bright. The iron mirror's gargantuan form loomed behind it as though leaning in to watch. Between them stood the silhouette, motionless. I approached, each step echoing. My reflection multiplied in every surface, a chorus of hollow faces trailing behind me. "Who are you?" I whispered. "What do you want?" The silhouette did not move. Yet the torches flickered, and in their light, a voice, soft, distant, as though carried on the wind, whispered, "You opened the door. Now you belong to the mirrors." A chill seized me. "No, I rest. I refuse." The voice sighed, a sound like dying embers. "They do not listen." The silhouette raised its hand and pointed at the silver mirror. The glass rippled, and a scene unfolded, me standing on a cliff's edge, storm clouds roiling overhead, the black iron mirror at my back. The wind whipped my coat, and rain lashed my face. The mirror's claws gleamed in lightning flashes. In the vision, I reached out to grab the mirror's frame. Its surface rippled, and I was drawn forward, face first, into the glass. The vision cracked like thunder, and I heard the shattering of worlds. The silhouette lowered its hand. The chamber's mirrors trembled. Reflections flickered, brief flashes of every victim I had been shown, their final moments playing in jagged loops. The father in the dining room, the woman with the anchor scarf, the cyclist, the homeless man. Faces twisted in fear, their screams silent behind the glass. I staggered back, stomach lurching. "Please," I begged. "Let me go." A low rumble shook the chamber. Mirrors cracked, lines spiderwebbing across every surface. The torches guttered, smoke filling the air. The black mirror's frame rattled as though strangled. In that moment, I understood the mirrors thrived on the future's violence. They showed visions to coerce me into fulfilling them. The only escape was to break the cycle. I squared my shoulders and advanced on the mirrors, fist raised. The silver mirror's glass peeled back like water. My reflection stepped out, an exact doppelgänger, blood-stained and hollow-eyed. It grinned, a slow curl of lips devoid of warmth. "You can never break me," it hissed, voice like grinding metal. I hesitated, only a heartbeat long enough for my reflection to strike. Its fist connected with my jaw, sending me sprawling. I tasted blood and grit. The chamber spun. Through the haze, I noticed the key glinting at my feet. With a surge of desperation, I lunged for it and scrambled to the black mirror. My fingers closed around its cold iron frame. I yanked it free, tearing it from the wall. The mirror groaned, the doppelgänger paused, its grin faltering. Clutching the mirror like a shield, I raised it between us. The glass pulsed, light spilling from its depths. The reflection recoiled, screaming, a sound that shattered the surrounding mirrors. Cracks webbed outward, and in a cascade of flying glass, every mirror in the chamber exploded outward in a fractal storm. I dropped to my knees, covering my head as shards rained down, slicing the air with high-pitched shrieks. When the ringing in my ears subsided, I dared to look. The chamber was gone. I lay in the alley where I'd found the black mirror, drenched in rain. The ornate piece lay shattered at my side, its fragments dull. The key burned cold in my fist. I staggered to my feet, rain washing the grime from my face. The street was empty, silent. Above, clouds scudded across the moon. In the puddles at my feet, I saw no reflection, only the swirling sky. I dropped the key into the nearest drain and kicked dirt over it. The air felt lighter, as though a weight had lifted. Yet in the distant windows of the buildings around me, I glimpsed glints of glass. For a heartbeat, I saw my face staring back at me, eyes still haunted. Then the windows darkened. I swallowed hard and turned away, footsteps echoing down the wet pavement. The night was still, or so it seemed. But behind every pane of glass, deep in its heart, something waited, something that had learned its lesson. And I knew, as long as mirrors existed, no reflection would ever truly be mine to control. Thank you very much, and see you all in the next video.